David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
We're continuing to see the deterioration of Donald Trump's ability to think and to speak and to sort of turn what's in his brain into words that other humans can understand. I mean, I'm almost struggling to explain what it is that we're seeing because it's so disturbing. Donald Trump had another one of these speeches where even the teleprompter couldn't make him sound coherent. We've seen this before. Take a look at Donald Trump speaking the other day, slow, slurring, sniffing, huffing and puffing, confused, unclear if he even knows what it is that he's reading off of his teleprompter. Notice that when the camera zooms out, he sort of seems to be strangely leaning on and clutching the lectern. I mean, every element of this audio and video is unusual.
We have budgets since we came into the administration. Since the election of 2016, since January 20th of 2017, we have done things with the military that few people would have thought possible. Budgets of $700 billion, $716 billion, and now $738 billion. Nobody would have thought that was possible, but we had them approved by Republicans and Democrats, and that money is now building the most advanced equipment anywhere on earth, equipment that nobody even could have conceived of even 2 years ago.
Put aside for a second that nothing he's saying is true or makes sense. There is much else going on here. This could be someone who's normally on uppers coming down or on an off day. That's one type of possibility. This could be continued cognitive decline, which we've been talking about. This could just be an exhausted 73-year-old who simply can't keep up with the demands of being president because he is obese, in terrible shape. It could be anything, but it's not normal and it's not good for the country. And as a reminder, Aaron Rupar from Vox posted this video to Twitter. The deterioration can be hard to notice day to day. When you hear Trump every day, you might not notice how much he has fallen off in terms of his speaking abilities. But look at Trump during his presidential campaign in 2015, which was already a far cry from what the guy was 20 years ago, but still comparatively quick, spry, agile, the opposite of 2019 Trump.
Because I don't need anybody's money. It's nice. I don't need anybody's money. I'm using my own money. I'm not using the lobbyists. I'm not using donors. I don't care. I'm really rich. I'll show you that in a second. And by the way, I'm not even saying that in a brag. That's the kind of mindset, that's the kind of thinking you need for this.
As a reminder, if that is not enough contrast, here's the famous incident, the United States of America, God bless the Palestinians and Jerusalem, which was initially, I guess, attributed to loose dentures, which we later found out Trump doesn't even wear.
Let us rethink old assumptions and open our hearts and minds to possible and possibilities. And finally, I ask the leaders of the region, political and religious, Israeli and Palestinian, Jewish and Christian and Muslim, to join us in the noble quest for lasting peace. Thank you. God bless you. God bless Israel. God bless the Palestinians, and God bless the United States. Thank you very much.
It's not just the slurring, okay? To be clear, when this happens, Trump seems not to recognize what he is reading or what he is saying. This is very serious stuff. If you look at a close-up of Donald Trump's face during some of these incidents, he actually sort of seems to be chewing on his tongue or having trouble getting his tongue out of the way or in a position where it doesn't hinder his speech. He's acting almost like he has full-on Novocaine from dental work or something very odd. This is not a joke. This is not political. This is just very serious. The Trump campaign is politicizing it. They are sending lackeys around to Fox News to claim that Joe Biden is actually having cognitive issues. Now, I covered the Joe Biden stuff last week. As I said, I would be a hypocrite if I point out when this stuff is going on with Donald Trump I would be a hypocrite if I didn't point it out when it's happening with Joe Biden. But Trump's the president, not a candidate for one of the nominations for president. And Trump's having the same issues, but 10 times over to a significantly greater magnitude. Check out Trump 2020 Director of Strategic Communications, Mark Lauder on Fox News, just playing politics and talking about Joe Biden.
Well, unfortunately, I know a lot of people say these are gaffes, but it's clearly a problem with Joe Biden. I mean, he gets about every detail wrong in a couple of minutes about this war story. He can't remember who the prime minister of the United Kingdom is. He couldn't remember what state he was in a couple of weeks ago. I mean, these are not gaffes. It is a problem with Joe Biden, and it's causing a lot of Democrats to start to rethink their frontrunner.
This is just too serious for partisanship. I don't know what other way I can say it. Biden might have something going on. We're talking about it. It was weird when he seemed to forget President Obama's name. It's been weird when he's misstated the state that he's in or when different things happened or whatever else the case may be. Trump has a very public and very visible multi-year decline of the same type of stuff that we've seen from Biden, but worse, many times greater. Trump leaving a signing ceremony without signing the thing he was there to sign. Trump walking away from his limo. He walks off of Air Force One. The limo's right in front of him. Trump wanders off and has to be physically pulled back by Secret Service and redirected towards his car. Trump wondering where Rudy Giuliani is when Giuliani is sitting directly in front of him. Trump saying we need to find out the oranges of the investigation, almost as if he's now the citrus detective of some kind, rather than the origins of the investigation. It's endless. I could just list these things for an hour. If you care about the country and recognize and agree, maybe you don't agree, but if you agree you need a cognitively able person in the Oval Office, you need to be questioning what it is that is happening with Donald Trump. I'm open to any and all suggestions as to what it is that might be going on here. And this was not the only weird thing that happened over the long Labor Day weekend. And that's what I want to talk about next. Another item in the sort of good thing it was a long weekend and lots of Americans weren't watching the news category is that Donald Trump tweeted out a classified image containing sensitive military intelligence. Trump tweeted this on Friday. It was a picture from a classified intelligence briefing in which he's basically taunting Iran over nuclear technology and over a failed rocket launch, saying, quote, alongside the picture he tweeted, "The United States of America was not involved in the catastrophic accident during final launch preparations for the Saphir SLV launch at Semnan Launch Site 1 in Iran. I wish Iran best wishes and good luck in determining what happened at Site 1." And as you can see, the tweet went with a picture, a satellite image, and there's more information on the image about what things are. It's a detailed picture. There is, signs pointing to a damaged support vehicle, a damaged gantry service tower. And this was an image from a classified secure intelligence briefing that the president received. That's how those images are labeled. This was a classified satellite surveillance image, and it was very easily, amateurs were able to take this image that Trump tweeted and sort of go backwards, reverse engineer, that it came from a particular American satellite, USA 224. Now, the fact that we even have this satellite and that these are the types of images it can produce and that it was at a particular location at a particular point in time, that in and of itself is already sensitive information. One of the things that's important in the world of classified information is that you don't want other countries to know what technology we do and don't have and how are we deploying it. By publishing this image, Donald Trump is not only publishing classified contents, right? The content of the picture itself is from a classified briefing, but he's exposing to China, to Russia, to whoever else, the exact capabilities of the satellite used to take the picture and its location. Trump is, of course, taking a legalistic approach, and so are his followers, saying, we had a photo and I released it, said Donald Trump, which I have the absolute right to do, because that's true. He's the president. He can declassify anything he wants. Anything that's classified that the president publishes is sort of de facto declassified, and that's something that he's allowed to do. That's not the important conversation. In fact, that conversation is a total red herring. The question is not, is Trump going to go to prison for tweeting this? Even though, by the way, people have gone to prison for distributing images that were gathered by these exact satellites. The issue is, does Trump understand what he's doing? Does Trump endanger the national security of the United States by tweeting this? Is it advantageous to be tweeting this in any geopolitical, national security, or intelligence sense? And the answer to all of these questions is obviously no. Iran had a failed rocket launch. There are defenders saying a picture had already been made public before Donald Trump tweeted this. Donald Trump tweeted a far higher resolution image with great detail, which exposes much more specifically the satellites that we have are using and their capabilities. Trump is doing it to try to taunt Iran. And in so doing, he's proving himself to be stunningly careless with classified information, which is not a shock. This is actually a trend. Remember when Donald Trump was in the Oval Office, he was visited by a couple of Russians, including a Russian spy recruiter, Sergei something. I believe it was Sergei Kislyak. And Donald Trump, in order to appear like the big man, he spilled secrets to the Russian spy recruiter that we got from our ally Israel. And of course, then Israel had to say, wait a second, maybe we have to be more careful in telling the United States the information that we have, because Donald Trump thinks only in terms of what will make him look like a big, strong boy, the powerful boy on the playground that everybody defers to. It's not about what's good for us. It's not about what's good for others. It's not about what's good for relationships or geopolitics or whatever else. Remember that the right went crazy warning us. Hillary can't be trusted. Hillary's email server. She's terrible with email and classified this and that. And the exact same people who told us Hillary can't be trusted, the same people who fell for that, are defending Donald Trump on this. There are people who have gone to prison for leaking pictures from satellites like this one. Again, this is the USA 224 satellite. It's a KH-11 type satellite. And Donald Trump's defenders are not only defending this, they're gleefully defending Trump doing it. If you're a foreign adversary, you can actually work backwards from this image to figure out, given that these are the capabilities of the United States satellite, how can we organize ourselves to hide things we are doing from satellites like this one? Once you understand the resolution and the capabilities of this satellite and the way in which it works, you can then start to work around the capabilities of this satellite. This is the height of some combination of, and you tell me what proportions it's at each of these things. This is a combination of arrogance, ignorance, delusions of grandeur, narcissism, cognitive decline, complete lack of responsibility, and complete carelessness with sensitive and classified information, and to some degree of just being a bad person who is using all of the elements of the presidency, not just deciding where Mike Pence will stay when he goes to Ireland so that you can make money off of him. I'll tell you about that later in the show. But also using the intelligence community and using classified information and using things like our satellites to try to taunt other countries and appear like the big man on campus. Let me know what you think. Let me know your reaction to all of this. I'm on Twitter at dpakman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. And remember that we are now streaming live on Twitch at twitch.tv/David Pakman. Remember that Twitch Prime subscriptions don't renew automatically each month. Many hundreds of you signed up for a Twitch Prime subscription for free if you have Amazon Prime last month. We're now in September. Those have expired. Please go back to twitch.tv. It takes 30 seconds. Subscribe to twitch.tv/David Pakman with Twitch Prime. It costs you nothing, and it counts as a paid subscription for us. It's great to be back. A lot to discuss after the long holiday weekend here in the U.S., and much more of that coming up right after the break.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new members of the day are Henny Watson-Matthews and Elena Dawson. Appreciate both of your support. Membership, the number one funding source for the show, the most direct funding source, and the funding source from which we keep the highest percentage. A lot of the different platforms on the internet that allow you to support creators take 5%, 10%, even 30% of your payments. We own our entire website system. So when you sign up for a membership, we pay 2.9% for payment processing to swipe that credit or debit card. Figuratively, we don't physically have it. And then we keep the rest. So it is the most direct way to get as much of your money as possible directly to the show. Sign up at joinpakman.com and stay a member. Mark Garcia is today's longtime sustaining member of the day. And Mark has been with us almost 5 years. Mark, thank you. Really appreciate it. Membership, joinpakman.com. You can also contribute via Patreon. Some people already have Patreon accounts and find it easier at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. All right. So I already mentioned at the top of the show, in the U.S., we had this long holiday weekend for Labor Day. The David Pakman Show was off. We debuted a long form episode that we had previously produced on healthcare. So many Americans, because of the long holiday weekend, didn't hear or see the ridiculous and embarrassing gong show of things that Donald Trump said. Now, unfortunately, the rest of the world didn't have a holiday weekend, or at least most countries didn't. Maybe somebody did. And thus, they did see and hear the absurdities that came out of Donald Trump's mouth and out of his Twitter account. In the United States, the weekend saw the approach of Hurricane Dorian, which is now made landfall, the most powerful hurricane on record at one point, heading to Florida, South Carolina, Georgia, even parts of North Carolina. Hurricane Dorian, as of last night, had already killed at least 5 people. By the time you hear this, unfortunately, but realistically, that number may be even higher. And Donald Trump says, I've never even heard of a Category 5 storm before. There have been 4 Category 5 storms during his presidency. And of course, his reaction to the ones that did damage and caused deaths in the past were disastrous and atrocious reactions and responses. Check this out. What is he talking about?
Determined and resilient, and we will support each other. And we will work very hard to minimize whatever the effect of what's coming at us. We don't even know what's coming at us. All we know is it's possibly the biggest. I'm not sure that I've ever even heard of a Category 5. I knew it existed, and I've seen some Category 4s. You don't even see them that much, but a Category 5 is something that I don't know that I've ever even heard the term, other than I know it's there.
When you've already been criticized for your terrible responses to prior hurricanes, when Puerto Rico was hit, or I don't remember where it was that he showed up and shot paper towel rolls like basketballs, like some kind of game. Maybe that was Florida, maybe it was Puerto Rico. They're all kind of blending together at this point because his reaction to all of them was so horrible. And then you say, who's even heard of Category 5 before? You look even more like you don't care. When you say you've never heard of an actual Category 5 storm coming, and there were 4 during your presidency, you seem like you don't give you know what about the people that are affected by the hurricanes. Trump has said this before, by the way. He said in October of 2017, who's even heard of a Category 5 hurricane hitting land? Hurricanes Irma, Maria, and Michael were at different points in the evolution of those storms, Category 5. And then Donald Trump creating even more chaos by saying Alabama's going to get hit. Alabama was not under threat. Donald Trump tweeting, quote, in addition to Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama will most likely be hit much harder than anticipated, looking like one of the largest hurricanes ever, already Category 5. Be careful. God bless everyone. And of course, in Alabama, nobody from actual weather services had said, you're fine. Nobody had said, you're not fine. Nobody has said you need to be worried. So Alabama immediately in a panic, officials right away having to say, hold on a second, the president is wrong. Everything's okay in Alabama. Alabama, you don't have to evacuate. You're going to be okay. And it's stunning that in the Trump presidency, scientists have been refuting Trump on climate for the entirety of his presidency, and even when he was just candidate Trump. And now even on weather, which, by the way, I know a lot of people on the right are probably saying, David, what are you talking about? Climate and weather are the same thing. No, they're not. And in fact, that's where a lot of confusion about climate change comes from. But now weather services having to refute Donald Trump on the subject of weather as well. Does Donald Trump have any recollection of the things that have happened during his presidency? Truly, I mean, we talked earlier about cognitive decline, memory issues, etc. Does he not care to remember, or can he not remember? Is something actually wrong with the guy's memory? So once again, serious questions increasingly being asked about, would you call this a narcissism issue? Is this a memory issue? Is it a cognitive state issue? And we had, I mean, it's terrible, really. We had yet another one of these major red flag cognitive events with Donald Trump over the weekend, which I talked about at the top of the show, another slurring and huffing and puffing, visibly confused moment from Donald Trump. These are adding up. There's multiple of these per weekend. And if you know, in a sense, the most benign explanation is Trump is merely such a narcissist focused only on himself that he just doesn't care to remember all of the other terrible storms that have happened during his presidency. In a sense, it's the most benign, but it also is the one indicative of the worst person possible. Cognitive decline doesn't mean you're a bad person. Memory issues don't mean you're a bad person. Simply not caring about other people is something where we could say, wow, he really just doesn't seem like a good guy, which of course would not come as a shock to anybody who's been following this guy for the last 10 or 20 years or however long he's been around and notable in New York City real estate. The emoluments clause violations of the to the Constitution continue to just rack up. Seemingly day after day, there are new violations to the emoluments clause of the Constitution by Donald Trump and the people around him. This time, Vice President Mike Pence in Ireland is staying at Donald Trump's golf resort, despite the reality that the golf resort is on the opposite side of Ireland, completely inconveniently located for the Dublin meetings and events that Mike Pence has. So what's the solution? Pence is going to stay at Trump's golf resort, play golf there as he did over the weekend, and fly back and forth across the country, which is a 3-hour drive each way, so that he can continue to enrich Trump and Trump's family by staying at his resort, even though it makes no sense. On the screen, if you're watching along with us, you will see a map of Ireland. You will see that Dublin, where Pence has events, is the opposite side of the country as Doonbeg, which is where Donald Trump's golf course and hotel are. You will also notice on the second map that there are endless hotels available in Dublin. And yes, I don't expect Mike Pence to stay at a 2-star hotel, but there are plenty of nice hotels available in Dublin, right where Mike Pence could have stayed in order to be able to walk to his meetings. I'm sure he would still get a ride, but none of those are Trump hotels. So Mike Pence is going to fly across the country on your dollar, on taxpayer dollars, playing golf at Donald Trump's property in Ireland, continuing to enrich Trump, one of the most profitable presidencies in history, by staying at Donald Trump's hotels. Now, Donald Trump likes to say being president has cost him, maybe has he said billions? I know he said millions and millions. I guess the argument is by focusing on making America great again, he's not focusing on his businesses and their opportunity costs and whatever else. And this is extremely damaging to his personal finances. Of course, the truth is the opposite, that Donald Trump has been funneling untold numbers of dollars into his businesses, which he and his family reap the profits from. Helicopters, security will be necessary for Mike Pence going back and forth from Trump's resort over to Dublin, making everything take way longer than it otherwise has to, inconveniencing way more people than it would normally have to. Also, Mike Pence can continue the grift and keep funneling government money. This is your tax money, the money that conservatives say they know what to do with far better than the government knows what to do with. It's getting funneled into Donald Trump's pocket, into Don Jr.'s pocket, into Eric Trump and Ivanka Trump. I don't know if Trump doesn't seem to like Tiffany Trump, but maybe she gets some of the money as well. I thought that the right was against wasteful spending of their tax dollars. What is more useless than this? Truly, there is no limit to Donald Trump's greed. This is the height of the kleptocracy, and he is getting away with it. Mike Pence's chief of staff, Mark Short, said earlier today that the decision to stay at Trump International Golf Links in Doonbeg was made at Donald Trump's suggestion. That I actually believe. We talk about how anytime Trump says anything, anytime a Trump lackey says anything, we have to trust but verify, or maybe not even trust, but just try to verify, because they lie all the time about everything. The idea that Trump suggested, hey, Mike, you going to Ireland? You should stay at my resort. That is believable. We should still try to fact check it, but that one I actually believe. And Mike Pence just loves it. Trump is getting kickbacks from Pence, in a sense, to show just how loyal Mike Pence is to Donald Trump. And speaking of which, let's not put all the attention on Mike Pence, because Donald Trump's dirty attorney general, William Barr, is going to be hosting a Christmas party for a couple of hundred people, I believe, in early December. Where other than Donald Trump's Washington, D.C. hotel? And there's actually something hilarious in this one. We are being told by the Justice Department that the only hotel that was available for William Barr's Christmas party was Trump's hotel in Washington, D.C. If that's true, that's actually kind of funny, because it means people already booked every other hotel. Nobody wanted Trump's hotel, and that was therefore the only one left. Doesn't exactly make it seem like the elite destination that Donald Trump claims it to be. But in any case, they are all doing it. They are all enriching Donald Trump and his family. The swamp was filled with a fire hose under this presidency. The extraordinary corruption of this administration is going unchecked. And I don't even have the delusion that there may be consequences to any of this stuff. It's going unchecked, period. Removal of Donald Trump from the White House is the only way to do it. And I'm already getting these lame, flaccid right-wingers, figuratively speaking, of course, who write in and say, Bernie would be the same. Bernie's got his 3 houses and he owns stock and he would benefit from a good economy. Does anybody understand the difference between Bernie writing a book about his political career and making enough money to get vacation homes with a net worth of about $1.1 or $1.2 million, which at nearly age 80 is actually not that much? I understand he's still way more privileged than tens of millions of Americans, but in the grand scheme of things, being nearly 80 and having a net worth of $1.2 million is not the problem that we have in this country. And Trumpists are equating that to a literal grifter president who is running a presidency for profit and just stuffing government money, your money, which supposedly you cared about and didn't want going anywhere that was wasteful, into his own pockets and the pockets of his family. You can't even talk to these people. If anyone thinks that Bernie making money off of a book is in any way comparable to what Donald Trump is doing, you're living on such a different planet that we probably are not going to understand each other. And I would suggest not even trying to talk to those people. Make sure you're following the David Pakman Show on Instagram at David Pakman Show. And while you're there, follow me on Instagram at david.pakman. Major developments in the world of my tomato plants, which are now flourishing with orange and red tomatoes. I will try to post an update to my Instagram page later today.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
So I got a ton of tweets over the weekend that were asking me, hey, David, are you going to be at the Straight Pride Parade in Boston this weekend? It's happening. You should be there. You should interview people. You should counter protest or whatever, because you live in Boston anyway. And no, I didn't go for safety reasons, because I didn't want to give it any attention. I ended up actually being out of the city anyway, as I often am, both during the weekend and after during the weekend. But this is not an event that appealed to me. The event happened. There were straight pride paraders. There were counter-protesters, actually more counter-protesters than paraders. There was a massive police presence. My contacts in law enforcement and the intel community told me that they were really busy managing all of the different threats and extremist groups that were expected to come in. There were more people protesting the parade than people marching for straight pride. In total, there were about 35 or 36 arrests in total. I don't know what percentage of those arrests were marchers versus counter protesters. I'm guessing at some point soon we will have that information. The marchers definitely had some themes in their messages. Support our troops was a theme. Build the wall was a theme. Great to be straight is a theme. A lot of pro-Trump stuff, just make America great again and this type of thing. Some people were hurt. 9 people ended up at area hospitals. So people here already know my feelings about this type of parade in general. A straight pride parade is unnecessary in the sense that it's not just if you have a gay pride parade, then obviously everything's fine and you should have a straight pride parade. The idea behind a gay pride parade is that we are talking about a historically marginalized and discriminated against group whose place in society good people want to affirm. Most people are straight. People don't get fired for being straight. Straight people have always been able to get married to those to whom they are attracted. I don't even want to dignify that part any further. The idea of, a white pride group, a white student union or whatever as the same thing as a Latino student union. Well, you're not talking about a historically marginalized and oppressed group, and we have to really examine what the motivations are of a lot of those groups, and the motivations aren't good, okay? So that's where we're going to stop with that analysis because it's such a stupid analysis that it doesn't even need to be done. One reason I didn't go is I don't want to give them attention. I think counter-protesting is totally valid, but they aren't really marching for straight pride. They are marching to anger people. They are marching to trigger and own the libs, as they like to say. And some of them are marching because they genuinely struggle with their masculinity, but that's a whole other story, which we're not going to talk about today. Very few of them actually show up to this stuff to really protest. And again, there were more counter-protesters this time around. What would happen if nobody showed up to counter-protest? And however many people, I don't even know how many marchers there were. Was it a few dozen? Was it 100 people? A couple? I don't know. Imagine if no one gave them any attention. They show up, they march around with their MAGA hats and their build the wall signs, and they're totally ignored. No one protests. No one cares. No one tries to fight the permit for the parade. They are just ignored. No one writes about it. They are irrelevant. I think that actually is a really great scenario. Now, again, I was out of town anyway, and there were all sorts of security concerns in terms of some of the extremist groups that were coming in. But these are just small groups of people doing really dumb things. What if we did just ignore them? Now, other perspectives are valid. When Bernie Sanders chose to do a Fox News town hall, the idea being, I'm going to go right in there and talk directly to people who might be on the right, and maybe I can convince them. And Elizabeth Warren said, I'm not going to participate at all because I don't want to dignify, in some sense, hate-for-profit Fox News and give them ratings. Both of those perspectives are valid. I respect what Elizabeth Warren did, and I think Bernie Sanders crushed it in his debate. But both are valid approaches. In the same way, you can take the perspective that a large showing of peace and love by counter-protesters at the Straight Pride Parade is the best way to fight against the message of the Straight Pride Parade. That's fine. I opted for a different path, and I wonder if every time they try to organize one of these, they just get the permit and nobody cares. People go and do other things. They go to the great museums in Boston. They go to all of the different great things that there are to do in Boston, and they just don't give any attention to these people. Would they keep doing these parades? Something tells me that they probably would not. They would not be doing this if no one paid attention, because the whole point of it is to get attention. So I didn't go. I wasn't there. I was out of the city in any case, but I would not have gone if I was in town, to be totally honest with you. Over the last few months, we've been talking about the trials and tribulations for independent news and politics on YouTube. And a viewer posted on our subreddit a question that brings up a really interesting point about all this, which is, might left-wing YouTube channels like the David Pakman Show and so many others, might we simply be collateral damage in the serious fight against extremism on YouTube? I want to take this seriously, but first let me sort of catch you up on what's been going on if you haven't heard. YouTube, over the last year, has been deprioritizing our content. We have had a reduction by about 2/3 or more in terms of the views that we get by YouTube's algorithm saying, oh, you like this other news and politics thing? Go and check out the David Pakman Show. They have increasingly been saying, go and check out CNN's YouTube channel or Fox News's or the mega corporate late night talk shows, not the David Pakman Show. That costs us views, so it costs us money. YouTube has been limiting monetization on anything considered even remotely controversial or sensitive in nature. When you cover news and politics, everything you talk about is potentially sensitive or controversial in nature. So that's not been good. So then in comes subreddit user Nudie, which the David Pakman Show subreddit, of course, at davidpakman.com/REDDIT. And Nudie says, I recently became a new subscriber of the David Pakman Show, both because I want to support the channel now that YouTube is demonetizing content and because I prefer the ad-free experience. I have experienced the same issues that have been reported by David. YouTube suggestions inevitably lead me back to American mainstream corporate media, even when I rarely follow up on those suggestions. Super done with Rachel Maddow, for example, but they keep pushing her. However, and this is the key part, I don't consider the new YouTube algorithm to be a bad thing. Like many, many others, I have had an angry anti-SJW phase that was largely pushed by a YouTube algorithm that drove me from Sam Harris debates evangelicals videos to Sargon and beyond. Radicalization on YouTube is a real problem. David, Secular Talk, and a few other progressive independent media shows might just be collateral damage in a very necessary move to stop people from being radicalized by a recommendations mechanism that drives them into a far-right conspiratorial fake news swamp. I do hope David will address this possible upside of the new algorithm at some point in the show. What if it helps stop Trump being reelected in 2020? In a sense, this viewer is exactly right. YouTube didn't go out and say, we hate independent news. Let's figure out a way to hurt independent news. Or even more so, let's figure out a way to hurt left-wing news or right-wing news on YouTube. We are collateral damage, but not of YouTube wanting to rid itself of extremism because they think it's the right thing. The truth is YouTube as an institution cares about what is profitable. Extremism actually is very profitable in a sense, in terms of watch time. When people get stuck in these echo chamber rabbit holes of extremist content, if the content is monetized, it is massively profitable for YouTube. So YouTube as an institution doesn't care about extremism per se. We're collateral damage of YouTube wanting to preserve its profit and make as much money as possible. I talked about this on the Joe Rogan program back in June. The path is simple. We want to make money. When advertisers get upset, we don't make money as YouTube. To keep advertisers happy, we need to pull monetization from extremist and racist content, and we need to make sure that that content is less searchable and less recommended. So let's put in place an algorithm that whitelists legacy corporate channels and then basically just makes guesses about independent content. And yeah, the David Pakman Show and Secular Talk and others get caught in that collateral damage. Now, there is a solution here. Channels like ours could be whitelisted. The David Pakman Show covers things like white supremacy. We cover racism. We cover breaking news. But we do it in an FCC safe way. And we are not advocating for extremism. We are fighting it. A real person or people could look at our channel and say, we are going to whitelist the David Pakman Show so that we keep recommending his videos to the within the algorithm, so that monetization continues at a higher rate, because we don't want him to be collateral damage to everything that we are doing. And in the meantime, over the weekend, lots of people I was surprised to hear from, some prominent people, actually got in touch with me and said, David, you've been talking about this for months. I am now seeing it as well. How can I help? What can I do? But in practice, the simplest thing everybody can do, some version of fund the shows you want to support directly. That's what it is. And I know people get mad and say, David, I watch 20 shows. I can't support all of them directly. You're asking me to spend $200 a month just on internet shows. Well, then pick a couple if you can afford it. If you can't, then don't. But the whole point is we have a system in place, membership, Patreon, which allows people to get around all of these issues and just say, I like what you're doing. I'm going to support it directly. You don't have to worry about monetization or demonetization. Doesn't have to be my show. That really is the path forward. A lot of people have been saying it for a long time, and it's never been more clear than it is now.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So this is not the type of story I would normally talk about, but it is kind of a perfect mix of pop culture and current events with the ongoing gun violence issues that we have in the United States. So I do want to take a few minutes to talk about it. A group of people showed up at a Popeyes fast food restaurant and demanded fried chicken sandwiches at gunpoint. This was in Houston, Texas. And to understand this, you need to understand what's been going on with Popeyes and chicken sandwiches. The whole backstory is that Popeyes introduced a chicken sandwich offering, and they did it with a very well-calculated viral marketing campaign, and it became a complete social media sensation. And while I haven't been to a fast food restaurant in more than 15 years at this point, I was still following it as something interesting from a social and business and marketing perspective. And these sandwiches went crazy. These sandwiches at Popeyes sold out nationwide. And they've been sold out for some time now. It was a $3.99 chicken sandwich, I believe. People went crazy for this sandwich, and they ran out of ingredients. And now they've said, we don't know when it'll be back, and we're trying to source what we need for it. And the genius of the campaign, in part, was that Popeye's social media campaign sort of went after Chick-fil-A, a rival chicken chain, tongue-in-cheek, but very, very effective. Wendy's jumped in on it as well. I don't care about this food. I never go to these places, but it was clever and it worked all over the countries. The sandwiches are just totally sold out. So in Houston, Texas, not shockingly, shortly before 9 p.m., 3 men and 2 women show up with at least one firearm. They had already gone through the drive-thru. They had already been told the store was out of chicken sandwiches. And they tried to go inside with their firearm to demand chicken sandwiches. One report says that an employee locked the door before anybody got in. Another report says the people did get in, so I'm unclear as to which version of that detail is accurate. The group reportedly had a baby with them, but the baby was left in the car when they tried to use a weapon to force the store to give them chicken sandwiches. Police, as of this morning, are looking for the suspects. Maybe by the time you hear this or watch this, the suspects will have been caught. Now, I know I say this all the time. We have a problem in the United States with people who see guns as a tool to solve problems. I get that this is chicken sandwiches, but it's the same damn pattern I've been pointing out for years. In the United States, yes, we have too many guns. Yes, it's too easy to get guns. We lack basic gun safety regulations. Ammunition should be more expensive. All of that stuff is true. It all needs to be dealt with. But we also have a cultural problem with guns. And one piece of that problem is that people think of firearms as ways to solve problems or to get things. Personal problems in the United States, too many people see as possibly being solved with a gun. Political problems, people see as possibly being solved with a gun. Cartoonishly here, a popular sold out chicken sandwich availability problem is seen as potentially being solvable with a gun. Now, of course, the poor decision-making skills by these individuals are particularly to blame in this particular case. But there are people who want to ignore the broader context that as silly as trying to get sold out chicken sandwiches with a gun is, it's happening in a country where people try to solve all sorts of problems with guns. And to pretend that that is not the context is deceptive, it's incomplete, and it is not going to further an understanding of or a solution to what it is that we are currently dealing with here. In any case, I hope that they find these people. As of right now, they are still looking. And no, even this is not going to get me back to fast food. I'm actually trying to think. I've said 15 years, but I'm really kind of getting up there now. I think it's been more like 18 years. Yeah, there's one exception. When a KFC opened in a place I was living when I was in my early 20s, I think I did once or twice go over to KFC, as I recently said on the bonus show, and I got one of those crispy strip meals with the mashed potatoes and that great coleslaw that KFC has. I'm sure it's terrible for you, but it tastes great. But other than those 2 slip-ups at KFC, it's been like 17 or 18 years since I've really been to a fast food restaurant. Anyway, I don't know. If you've tried the sandwich, let me know if it's actually that good. Okay, people have been asking for me to bring this back. I did it a few months ago. People loved it. I'm going to do it again. I am doing book recommendations today. I've been reading a ton. I was recently on vacation and I read 3 books while I was in Aruba. The David Pakman Show book recommendation page is back, davidpakman.com/recommendations. I'm going to make a newfound effort to keep it updated. And you can now, once again, this has been gone for years, You can support the David Pakman Show when you buy the books I recommend using the links at davidpakman.com/recommendations. By the way, now I have to be very careful in how I say this. If you click on one of the links at davidpakman.com/recommendations and you don't end up buying one of the books I recommend, but you buy something else, that also supports the David Pakman Show. I'm being very careful in the language that I use, all right? Let's start. I'm going to give you 2 nonfiction books and 2 fiction books. I just finished this 2 days ago. American Kingpin, okay? The epic hunt for the criminal masterminds behind the Silk Road. It is extraordinarily well written by Nick Bilton. I think I read this in 3 days. It's close to 400 pages. I was so sucked in by it that over the long holiday weekend, Labor Day weekend, I read this in like 3 days. This book, number 1, is just a caper of the highest level in catching Ross Ulbricht, the creator of the Silk Road, a dark web website on which firearms and drugs were bought and sold. It shows how clever some people in law enforcement can be. And it also shows us the dysfunction that exists between different law enforcement agencies and intelligence agencies. You know, we hear, oh, they don't work well together. This book, aside from just being an extremely entertaining read, it sucked me in from the first page. It also shows the dysfunction that exists between agencies. So get this one, davidpakman.com/recommendations, American Kingpin, The Hunt for the Criminal Masterminds Behind the Silk Road. My second nonfiction recommendation for you today is Plutocrats. Plutocrats by Chrystia Freeland. This is a book about, without making ad hominems and without placing too many value judgments on things, it's a book about the development and growth of this sort of plutocratic overclass in American and world society. It deals with oligarch types in other countries. It talks about tax policy. It talks about a lot of the different political and financial elements that have led to much of the inequality that we now have. It's not just inequality in terms of money, the book points out. It's also inequality in terms of access to education, which is related to money, and other things, okay? Plutocrats by Chrystia Freeland, davidpakman.com/recommendations. Use the links there to get it. Okay, now, 2 fiction books, a brand new one and then a classic. I read this during my vacation in Aruba a couple of weeks ago. Delta V by Daniel Suarez. This is, much like American Kingpin is a real-life caper, this is a sci-fi outer space sort of caper. It is an extremely interesting book. A lot of science in it, which in no way makes it feel like a slog in any way. The book moves. I think it took me like 5 days to read it. Of course, I was just sitting on the beach every day reading. It's easy to get through books that way. And it involves something we've been talking about in the real world, which is the possibility of asteroid mining in the future. It is so well written. The science in it makes it interesting. And I could not more highly recommend this book, Delta V by Daniel Suarez. I tweeted about it the other day, and a couple people tweeted me pictures that they had already purchased the book. That's a new fiction recommendation. And then an old classic fiction recommendation. I'd never read this until a few months ago. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. There are many versions of this book. Of course, it was not written in English. This is, as far as I know, an unabridged. Oh, no, it is translated and abridged by Lowell Bear. This is a great translation. I recommend it. It's not as long as some versions. This one is still 500 pages, but it goes quick. The Count of Monte Cristo is just one of the best stories that has been told, period. It's a story of revenge. It is a story of entrepreneurship, I would say. It's just a great book. So all of these and many other recommendations, go to davidpakman.com/recommendations. Use the links on that page to get these books, and then you will be supporting the David Pakman Show in so doing. And also, if you buy any of these books, most authors are now on Twitter, not Alexandre Dumas. He's been dead for a long time, but many authors are on Twitter. I recommend, if you get these books, help the show get attention in an organic way by tweeting to me and the authors, I bought your book because David Pakman recommended it. And I'll do another one of these in a couple of weeks if people are interested. We have a voicemail number. That number is 219-2-DAVID-P. Today's voicemail caller is making a very, very serious accusation against me. Take a listen to this.
Hey, David. I can't help but feel a little bummed out about the whole intro song voting process. I mean, I think option 2 is the best, and I really liked the song, so I went back to the video to listen to it again today, and I realized that you had edited the YouTube video to, like, make the quality lower on the song. And I don't know, that's, like, really unfair.
Yeah.
Obviously. And, you know, it's just a psychological fact that people usually only remember the first and last items in the list. And you clearly, like, put number 2 second to make people not remember it. I don't know why you have this bias against it. Like, my friends said that they preferred number 2 as well.
Listen, it would not even occur to me but by the way, I don't do the editing, to say to Pat, listen, go back in and reduce something to make this particular song sound bad, because I don't want people to like that song. We don't have the time to do this. It would never occur to me to do something like that. We did nothing of the sort. Just not a lot of people like number 2. And your thought that most people like the first or last thing that they hear, that's not true. We had 6 songs, and the plurality liked song number 4, which is right in the middle. So you're wrong on the facts. You're wrong about the assessment. And I take personal offense to the allegation that we would do anything like that. We've got a great bonus show for you today. We will talk about the 5 industries being hardest hit by Trump's China tariffs. At least a couple of them might surprise you. We will also talk about a reusable bag that a study found makes people think users of this bag are gay, which makes no sense. But we will talk about the study. And I will also tell you about, I've alluded to this before, I'm going to talk about the problems with MRIs for low back pain and the sort of garden path into the medical world that it will often open at very limited, to very limited benefit, better said, to the patients. And I've talked about this a little bit before, but now we actually have some significant data about it. So that's all on the bonus show. There's 2 ways to get the bonus show. Become a member at joinpakman.com. If you like the regular show, you will like the bonus show. So sign up. If you don't want to become a member, and why you wouldn't is beyond me, but imagine for a second someone didn't want to be a member. Become a patron for at least $5 a month, and you'll get access to that same bonus show at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. It's great to be back from the holiday weekend, a very packed week with some very special guests I will have to announce a little bit later on this week.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.